Hello for the 16th week in Ordinary Time using the Gospel Matthew 13:24 to 43. I call this homily Weeds, Weeds. Last week Jesus was talking to the big crowd of people with his disciples. And his disciples said to Jesus, "Why do you teach these people in parables?" Well, he said, because this is the only way I can get them to understand. So I'll tell stories, these religious stories, with a punchline or with a deep insight. And so he did that mainly to the people in the crowds. In fact, he has developed or told more than 70 parables. And, well, why do you do that? The disciples said, because they just don't understand. They can't see it. They can't understand it. They don't get it. So I teach them in parables, but not you. I tell you guys directly, face to face, heart to heart, over a long period of time we've been together. You get a better insight. But these insight into these parables, I think, are phenomenal. And this week we have three parables. The three parables is the man who sowed seed, and it wound up to be wheat and weeds seed. And that's the kingdom of heaven is like that. And secondly, the mustard seed, another seed, and the kingdom of heaven is like that. And the leaven in making the bread, the yeast, and the kingdom of heaven, the way Matthew puts it, or the others, the kingdom of God, is like this parable. Well, I'd like to look at quickly the three parables, the first two. Mustard seed has to do with the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven. And it has to do with the kingdom of God is something very, very external. That mustard seed, small. It's too bad that we don't deal with mustard seeds anymore. They might be in our spice cabinet and it might be ground up. But Jesus would say, isn't it amazing? This little mustard seed becomes a shrub or a tree, and the birds of the air come, and it blossoms, and it's big. It's external. The kingdom of God is something very external, material, concrete, and big. Well, then the second, as far as the kingdom of God, is something internal. It's like yeast. Once again, we don't deal too much with yeast. Kroger makes all the bread and puts the yeast in the flour, and finally it comes to the store. We don't get a chance to really make that personally and knead it and wait for it and then put it in a hot oven and then smell it and eat it with butter. But the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God is like yeast. It's something internal, and it's happening in everything. It's happening here on earth. It's happening in the galaxy of galaxies. It's happening all over the world and all over the planets. The kingdom of God, something is deeply happening in it. Okay, now here's my favorite, and that's the part of today's gospel. And that is another parable, especially the weeds. Because the weeds sort of try to reveals evil in the world or in the universe even. Why is there evil? And evil is internal and external too, but why is there weeds and not just good seed or not just wheat? Well, I'll tell you, I don't understand evil. I find it very hard to understand why are millions and millions of people dying today of the coronavirus, COVID-19, and the old innocent people. Why is that happening? All over the world. There's not any good things in the world, but there's evil things in the world. I never and still do not understand why a little child suffers. You ever see some of the little children in warfare? And they're totally innocent. You can just see it in their eyes, the fear on your TV set. Why are there wars from day one, it seems? World War I, World War II, and we don't have time to go into all the wars since World War II, and still, and how we wind up being in a war for the last 17 years, or why? I don't really understand. But I think the weeds help me, and like one of the crowd, not just one of the disciples, it helps me to understand why there is evil in the world. And the answer is, I don't understand, but the answer is, it just is. And it's going to stay in the world until the end of time, until the end of the world. And evil is going to grow side by side with the weeds, and the wheat and the wheat. And we're going to always have it. We always have to fight against it. We continually try to weed our garden or keep our lawn only grass, the good seed. But that's how Jesus taught the masses of people. And that parable gives me, one of the crowd, a deep insight. Oh, there is an end coming, or there is the beginning of the end, or the end which leads to a new beginning. It's called the kingdom of God. It's called the kingdom of heaven, or just call it heaven. But we can't sit back and say, oh, don't worry, it'll come. Each person has to try to move the planet, to move our country, to move the universe in the totality of the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven. So a little answer is a big deal for me. A parable that leads me with a little part of an answer to a big problem and a real mystery of why there's so much evil in the world helps me. And of all these three today, I love the wheat and the weeds. And sort of the weeds gives me a deeper insight into the world today, or into me. Am I like a blade of wheat, or a rose? Or am I more like a dandelion, a weed that we try to get rid of? The parables of Jesus, unbelievable insights into God the Father, Jesus himself. You know, the parables of Jesus, those 70, one of the titles that they used to use about the New Testament and the Gospels was the sayings of Jesus. Well, there are unbelievable. The kingdom of God is like. The kingdom of God is like this. Like the Good Samaritan, like the prodigal son. You know, Do you really like these parables? I do. I hope you like today's three, especially the weeds. Have a good day.